All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome back from your quick lunch break. I am Danielle Washburn, Digital Innovation Leader for high school and state agency zones. We are so excited that you are joining us today. We do have an awesome and amazing lineup. So let's take a look at that lineup. And as a reminder, you can find it on the NTI Toolkit, and that is at jcps.me/NTI, and go to the teacher page. So let's take a look at what we have coming up next. We do have Gifted, using choice boards effectively to enrich GT students, with our very own Christy Hayes. She is amazing. And then we have a Reciprocal Teaching, HYP, for distant learning, opportunities to respond, HYP, for distant learning. And I just had a quick conversation with Bo, and he is amazing. So that is definitely something to tune in with, as long as with all of our other sessions. And then we're going to close out the day with fact checking and anti-racist resources and leveraging AP classrooms. So don't forget that if you have not had the chance to click subscribe, you can go ahead and do that, and as well as tweet out everything using the JCPS digging hashtag that you are learning with each other. We do encourage you to share with one another. So now, without further ado, I would turn it over to Christy. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you very much.
Awesome. And now I can turn it over to you.
All right. Let me go and share screen. Okay. Oh.
Yep. And then you'll just hit CC.
It's there.
Okay. And you'll click on it. Yep.
The CC.
Yes.
Gotcha.
There we go.
All right. So my name is Christy Hayes. I work for the Gifted and AP department at Camp Edwards. And we are sharing with you today, or I'm sharing with you today, some ways for you to create different types of menu and choice boards to help student engagement and the differentiation for gifted students. So just to give you, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but this is from NAGC, and it also is our definition for gifted and talented. The highlighted area are the things that I want you to focus on. So it's students, youth that have a high evidence of high achievement capability in the areas such as intellectual, which we call it general intellectual or GI, creativity or creative, artistic, which is going to be your visual performing arts type of identification, or leadership, or the specific academic areas, which include reading, math, science, and social studies. And those are the students that we are focusing on, trying to provide them enrichment during this time and obviously all year long. So by understanding the characteristics in each area of giftedness, teachers and parents are better able to work together to provide a challenging and rigorous curriculum for these unique students. So some of the characteristics to think about for gifted learners, and some of these are very visible within the classroom. They're abstract thinkers. They easily recognize patterns. They have a very high vocabulary. They're usually 1 or 2 grade levels above their peers, and it doesn't have to be in all areas. So depending on what area they are identified in, they would be 1 or 2 grade levels above. So that the myth of gifted kids are gifted in all areas and everything is a myth. So if they're gifted in reading, they would be 1 or 2 grade levels above, but they might not be in math or science or social studies. They're very observant. They're independent workers. Sometimes they do have that tendency because usually they are perfectionists and they don't want to work with other students. They want to do their own work and do it the way that they want to do it. They are, especially your creativity and probably your visual performing arts students are sensitivity and compassion, showing empathy to others, and they sometimes already know the information being taught. So that's why we want to give them some enrichment. So providing enrichment in the way of choice boards and menu boards is really a way to differentiate. So when you differentiate instruction, you're recognizing students' varying backgrounds, their knowledge, readiness, language, their preferences in learning and interests, and to react responsibly. Differentiated instruction is a process to teaching and learning for students of differing abilities in the same class. So one of the quotes that I like for gifted students, just to remind them that unless you try to do something beyond what you've already mastered, you will never grow. And that's one of the things we always want to have continuous progress with our gifted students and not let them stagnate. So we need to be open to letting a student that has an in-depth understanding of a concept help teach the class. And by that, I mean, they're not standing up in front, but maybe you can give them an independent project. They could do a passion project on a topic that you're teaching, and they could share what they've learned outside of what you're teaching within the classroom. So it's giving them that level of being an expert in an area and letting them share that expertise with the class. Learning to be the guide on the side for these students, not the sage on the stage. So a lot of times they, like I said, they like working independently. So these menu boards and choice boards are really good for them because it gives them the option to doing something that the other students are doing, but at a different level. And usually they can do it by themselves. Remembering that progressive knowledge is the goal in learning to move students beyond mastery. And choice is good. It increases student motivation. So I always like this little cartoon. I've used it a lot. In order to meet the needs of gifted students, we must have a better understanding of what differentiation looks like for students. And it just says, thinking outside the box is difficult for some people, so we have to keep trying. Our students deserve it. All right. So another thing that we have to think about is that the learning should be just right for each student. And the key is to start with just one type of differentiation strategy and then build on to more strategies as you become better at one. Then maybe you can add something different. I'm going to show you more than these three types of differentiation. There's one called the Bloom chart, the Think-tac-toe, and Jigsaw. And this is Dr. Roberts and Dr. Inman from WKU. And it's from one of their books. All right, so some of the benefits of using menu and choice boards. We've already talked about some of these. Obviously, it's allowing for student voice and choice. Differentiates learning, provides flexibility, offers independent activities, and encourages responsibility and accountability. All right, so now I'm going to slow down a little bit. So this is the first one, a Bloom chart, and I'm going to show you an example, and then I will show you a blank one. Is using the same content or topic, but varying the learning activities by using the different levels of Blooms, such as create, evaluate, analyze, apply, remember, and understand. So this is the revised Blooms. So as you can see, you want to get the students up to these higher levels of evaluate and create. So these are just different types of products. Obviously, there are hundreds of different ways that students can show you their learning and their mastery of a topic or a standard. All right, so this is a Bloom chart that I used when I taught SCATs at WKU while I was working on my gifted specialist degree. And This was one of the things that we used for the students to be able to have choice. It was actually middle school. So these are, it's just an easy way to design learning experiences that allow the content to remain the same while altering the process and the product to provide challenge and choice. So the way that this is not in color, but the way I color coded it was the students had to pick between the top two. They could pick this was, I think this was yellow and a blue, yellow, blue, yellow, blue. But so they had to pick either one from create and evaluate, one from analyze and apply, and one from understand and remember. The content was all about myth characteristics. And so then the process is different. And so with create, obviously they created a debate dialogue, and then it gives them the directions, like using a debate forum, create a dialogue between Hades and Demeter on who should have Persephone for the majority of the year. If they chose evaluate, they were an advocate, and they were going to write a letter to Zeus, and it was writing a persuasive letter to Zeus, the same type of thing. So they had to understand the story very well, which we had broken it down and worked with it a lot during that week. And then this was the final products for the week after they went through the story. So analyze was compare with a Venn diagram. Apply was to relate, and with a newspaper article, sorry. Understand was to summarize and do a storytelling, which was, I used a digital program called Storybird, but they could use whatever they wanted to. Oh, sorry. And then the last one was remembering, which was identifying and using photo story. So, and they just retold the myth using photos and text that way. So that is one way to use it. And here is a blank one. So it's very easy to recreate, and you could recreate it in Google Docs or a Google slide, and then let them know how many you wanted them to do. They don't have to do 3 like I made we had plenty of time. We were there for 2 weeks, so they had plenty of time to work on it. But you could choose what you wanted your students to do based on their level of understanding of whatever the content was. So then there's another one called Think-tac-toe. It addresses content in a variety of ways by allowing students to pick their own activities, one from each row to complete. And it's a great strategy to incorporate Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences. All right, so I'm not sure how well you can read this, but so this one was one I used with 5th graders when I was working in the library, and I was working in Bullitt County. So we were doing mythology as well. And so the students, the way this works is I set up my topics. So I had one row for characters and things that I wanted they could choose one of these. Setting was another one, and they could choose one of these to do. Then myth characteristics, which we had gone over in depth, they used one of these. This one actually has a rubric with it, so that if you need to use it for a grade, which you would in a classroom, as a gifted teacher, I would not use it with a rubric, but I would give definite feedback on any of the products that the students give to me. And then this is just an example of a couple of things that the kids did. So he would have picked the one in the middle, this one on settings, and this first one on myth characteristics. And I can see that he did a compare and contrast, and then this looks like he did a story map. All right, another example for a Think-tac-toe or tic-tac-toe board for younger students. And this is out of one of the books that I have in the resources at the end. These are wonderful. This is a K2 book for math, and they just choose one shape from each row to complete. Obviously, with depending on what grade level you use it for, because there could be kindergartners that definitely need some enrichment if they already know all their numbers and they're ready to move on to addition. You would have to probably work with this in a small group and give them a little bit of guidance on how to create some of these different products. So they would choose one square, one circle, and one diamond in order to finish up their products for this unit. And then this is a blank Think-tac-toe. You can see how easy it is to create. There's not much to it. You can even have the Think-tac-toe where if you do it digitally, where you can put links in for them to go and complete different activities. So it's almost like its own choice board that we did in the spring for gifted students, which I'll show you at the end. So a meal menu is where you're actually using the words like breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then dessert. And so it has at least a total of 9 predetermined choices, as well as 2 enrichment options for students. All the products carry the same weight for grading. There is, in the book that they come from, there are rubrics already created to help score different products that the students have to create. And they have similar expectations for completion for time and effort. And you can use the different levels of Bloom or incorporate the different learning styles.
And Christy, I just really like the meal menu choices. I think one that's just so creative, getting students to have choice in their classroom. And definitely I like the title of the meal menu.
The meal menus are fun.
Yes.
This is one I actually used here in Jefferson with, I'm trying to think, I think it was second graders, maybe first graders. And so they were allowed to choose their own chapter book. We did a book study. And so this one is very generic. It's also in the books that I'll show you at the end. And so the students basically choose one choice for breakfast, one choice for lunch, one choice for dinner, and with my gifted students, they have to do a dessert because they usually pick the free choice, and then they just tell me what they want to do to share their chapter book with me. And so they can work on these as they go along while they're reading their chapter book. So it's a good way to keep them on task so that they know what they need to be working on while we're reading as well. All right, so here is the JCPS. So these are the ones that we created back in the spring. And I just wanted to share, these are what we know in JCPS as the choice boards that we were all given. I'm going to show you the upper grade level ones. So for gifted students, these are still good options. They're still up. You can use the link in my presentation to get to them. So knowing what your students are identified in, and we are doing better at identification. So now we have students that are identified in reading, math. There's probably some science. There may be some social studies now. I know we're doing leadership. We're working on creativity, and obviously we have the general intellectual. General intellectual children, they can choose anything from the choice boards. But if these two, the way we had these set up was we had 2 sections for LA identification, 2 sections for math identification, 2 sections for social studies identification, 2 sections for science identification. So the students that are identified with specific academic areas, they had 2 choices to choose from. And then this bottom one was creativity. This one was if they had leadership identification. This is visual performing arts. I think this one is drama, and I think this is just the visual arts. So these are still useful for any students that need any kind of enrichment. They are there, they are available. So we definitely would like for you to continue using them to help your students receive the enrichment that they need during this time, especially if your school doesn't have a gifted resource teacher or itinerant teacher, as we're now called. So if you don't have a teacher, but you know you have students that are identified gifted, please make use of these. All right, I want to move a little bit quicker. So this is where I got a lot of the information and the research. This is Dr. Roberts and Dr. Inman. They are actually collaborating with JCPS and helping us make our gifted program even better. And this is another really good resource. It's a book called Teaching Gifted Kids in Today's Classroom. She gives lots of good, valuable information and ideas for using, for working with gifted students in the classroom. It's really a good book. So the one where I got the menu board and the one that looked like the tic-tac-toe with the shapes for the younger students is these. This is called differentiated instruction with menus. They are in all the different areas. I have K2 science, social studies, math, language arts, and then I have 3 through 5 in the same areas. So it's all your specific academic areas. Everything, they're made, the menu boards are made for you. So if your school has extra money, these are an excellent resource for schools. I highly recommend them. This one is really good about just trying to help you with differentiation and how it looks and works in a classroom. So that's another good resource. Oh, sorry. So I did do this page for you. So just for general, oh my gosh, so sorry. I keep moving my thing. So gifted resources, you have the CAGE website, you have NAGC, Mensa for Kids. I get a lot of my lesson plans from there. You could actually look at the lesson plans for there and turn them into, turn some of the activities into choice boards. PBS Learning Media is always a great place to find different types of interactive and digital learning for students that will provide enrichment. And then on the other side, we have the menu and choice board resources. These are all digital. So there are some that are already created. There are some that are just templates for you to use. Like, I think it's this one. So she has all these templates that already have, where she already has a choice board up. And then all you have to do is use the she's got everything set up for you. And they're just templates with different backgrounds. So that saves a lot of work. It's really nice. This one has a lot of choice boards and games. So these are already created for you. So there's just all these different types of menu boards that you can go ahead and use. And I just wanted to give you some things that were already created so you didn't have to do a lot. And some of these are also like templates of things that you can use. And that's pretty much it. If you have any questions or you need better copies of things, I can send you PDFs of like the Bloom chart and the Think-tac-toe. You can just contact me at my email.
Yes, thank you. And when you said that sharing resources, I always say sharing is caring, especially if it's already curated out there. There's no reason to go out there and recreate the wheel. You can just edit it how you want to be edited.
I do that a lot.
Yes.
I am going into my 30th year. I have recreated lots of wheels that are already made. So always good to use resources that are already, if they're out there, make use of them. Especially the JCPS choice boards. We really would like for people to go back and, you can assign those to your gifted students that are identified and have them do some of those during the week when they need some enrichment. So, but as always, all of our resources are for all students. So even if they're not identified, any of the resources are available for all students. So.
Yeah, and it's good that those choice boards are still out there. And like you said, teachers can access that link and assign it to their students. So that is a huge bonus and a lift for our teachers, that they don't have to, again, go out there and recreate the wheel.
Absolutely. Yeah. Nice to see you again.
Yes, nice to see you. Thank you, and have a great day. And if you are tuning in, her presentation, it is linked to the schedule. I posted the link in the chat as well as the direct link to the presentation. Her presentation was filled with amazing, awesome, and lots of resources. So thank you so much.
All right. See you later. Thank you.
See ya. All right. So we still have a little bit of time before our next audience come in. And we just want to also remind you to continue to tweet out to the hashtag. So let's go over there and take a look at what is going on in the Twitter universe right now. And we do want to share everything that we are learning. So sharing is caring as well. So let's top post right here for right now. It is the fact that we have, or we can see, up to 49 people in Google Meet. So if you are an educator that is still using or is currently using Google Meet, that view is there right now for you. And I know that some people have the blur options, and that is slowly but surely coming into Google Meet if you have that available. Another resource, again, because we are sharing with what we are learning, is about Minecraft. So Jim Unger, he is our Minecraft guru in the district, and the exciting news that came out not too long ago is that now Minecraft can now be used on Chromebooks. So yes, if you have a Chromebook, you can access Minecraft as well. So that is building roller coasters, which is a huge project that students can do, as well as those gifted and talented students as well. If we scroll down to see what else is going on in the Twitter universe, and it is the schedule, we do have those yes cards from the amazing and incredible one of our newest members, Rebecca Reynolds. She is saying yes to Kimberly, and she simply states that, I love that you jumped in and share about your why and yourself on our Zone Wonderful band slides. And if you remember, Dr. Polio, he reminded us what is our why in education. And she goes on to state that she cannot wait to continue to work together and support your amazing students. Love, Becca Reynolds. So yes, that shout out to Kimberly from Ditsy Elementary. Another teacher is sharing about how they collaborated with the second grade teachers at Blake Elementary to create a formative assessment task. More love on the hashtag about Minecraft. And again, if you need to learn anything about any technology that's going on in your school, you can look for that hashtag JCPS Dig In, and you can learn lots and lots of information on that hashtag. So Matt, he's just tweeted out, and he's my partner, amazing partner from high school, that teachers in JCPS, have you struggled with how to post your Google Meet recordings in your Google Classroom? So he has created a short video for some help in posting those Meet recordings to your stream or classwork for your students to view later. So that resource is out there right now on Twitter. You could go to that hashtag JCPSDigIn or our YouTube channel where you are now, and you can receive access to that video. I'm pretty sure there are a couple jokes in that video, and he will definitely make you laugh in that video. And we have one more minute, so let's see what is another thing. And from Lisa, we are learning now, got the dot camera and the second screen working together. It almost feels like we are back in the classroom, so we can take a zoom in on her picture. She does have the second camera and her document screen as well. I love your organization and your document camera right there in the corner. I know that you are rocking it out for your students. All right, so let's quickly take a look at the schedule to see who is coming up next. And don't forget, you can get this schedule on the JCPS NTI page. And what is coming up next is Reciprocal Teaching, HYP, for distance learning from MTSS engagement. We have Dominique and Amy. So let's see if they are here. They are. How are you?
We're doing well. How are you?
Good. So good. So great to see you all. Do you all have any questions before we get started?
Just how to get started.
Okay. Is anyone sharing their screen or their?
I'm sharing my screen.
Okay. Okay. No problem. So you want to go to the three dots at the top right corner.
Okay.
And then you want to go to share screen. Yep. So you want to navigate to what you are sharing. So it looks like So you want to go to present. And we want to make sure those closed captions are turned on. So you want to hit hide on that toolbar. So it can, and then go. So click on the down arrow next to the CC. And you want to go and at the top. So you want to change that position to the top. Click on CC. And now, right there. Now you're good to go.
Okay.
All right.
We're ready?
We are ready.
Okay. I just want to welcome everyone to our training. You'll notice at the bottom left-hand corner, there's a bit.ly there. And if you jot that down, that'll give you access to all our slides. I am Amy Downs. I am with the MTSS Engagement Department. Today, we're going to be talking to you all about reciprocal teaching from our toolkit, modes of instruction and student practice. And I work with Zone 2.
And Amy, before, we are receiving a little bit of a feedback. I don't know if someone has their YouTube channel turned on, or if, Dominique, if you don't mind muting, sometimes that helps with the feedback as well. Okay, I think it fixed. So you can continue.
Hi, I'm Dominique Dobson-Penn with MTSS Engagement, and I am the resource teacher for AIS schools. I'm going to start by showing you the components of our department for multi-tiered systems of supports known as MTSS. The concept map provides a visual of the department within MTSS. So one department is MTSS Academics. The MTSS Academic Department supports schools by ensuring teachers are providing all students with academic supports that includes differentiation, personalization, and enrichment activities that are guided by the Universal Design for Learning principles, focusing on Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions and support. Another department is MTSS Behavior. The MTSS Behavior Department supports schools in implementing school-wide behavior systems and frameworks. The two frameworks used by JCPS are Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports, PBIS, and the Behavior Support Systems Model, which is in line with PBIS and restorative practices. In addition, the team supports school personnel in understanding and utilizing classroom management strategies. Additionally, there is the MTSS Re-Engagement Department. The MTSS Re-Engagement Department supports students who are transitioning back to their home schools from Miners Daniels Academy and Breckenridge Metropolitan. And then our department is the MTSS Engagement Department. The goal of the MTSS Engagement Department is to increase student achievement by equipping teachers with high-yield pedagogical practices to maximize student engagement. 6 MTSS toolkits were created to provide resources for Tier 1 instructional practices to increase student engagement, reduce student behaviors, and to decrease disproportionalities. The 6 MTSS toolkits were created to provide resources for Tier 1 instructional practices to increase student engagement and reduce student behaviors. Here are the 6 MTSS toolkits. When you go to the bit.ly that we shared with you at the beginning, you will be able to click on the toolkit image. You will have access to the MTSS department webpage and those toolkits. So please check that out when you have a chance. Listed are the MTSS engagement resource teachers for each zone and level. Please note who your MTSS engagement resource teacher is so you can reach out to them, and we're all happy to support you. So for today's session, we will explore ways to implement reciprocal teaching with your students, whether it be brick and mortar or virtually. So the modes of instruction and modes of student practice toolkit is unique as it has 2 parts to it. As teachers, we must first deliver various modes of instructional strategies, provide students with higher rates to reach understanding. Once students have learned through high-quality instruction, teachers should create opportunities for students to practice their newly acquired knowledge. The key to improving, deepening, and truly grasping the concept is providing a variety of effective opportunities to practice. Today, we're going to focus on the mode of instruction called reciprocal teaching. The toolkit success criteria utilizes reciprocal teaching during small group instruction where students take turns as the teacher using comprehension strategies to make meaning and engage in self-questioning. Dr. John Hattie defines reciprocal teaching as a metacognitive strategy where students practice comprehensive strategies to make meaning and engage in self-questioning. Typically delivered in small group instruction, each student takes a turn as the teacher in summarizing, questioning, clarifying, and predicting. And Amy's going to continue on more about reciprocal teaching.
So reciprocal teaching, it was originally built on 4 major strategies that teaches students what good readers use to comprehend text. As we've learned over time, these strategies are not just reading strategies, but they lend themselves to all types of deeper learning and expand just beyond that reading content. The 4 strategies have been coined the Fab 4, and that is, as you can see on your screen, predicting, questioning, clarifying, and summarizing. These roles are defined as, in reciprocal teaching, summarizing highlights key ideas in the task. Questioning poses questions about the task, including unclear parts, puzzling information, and connections to other concepts. Clarifying is when students make concerted attempts to clarify concepts that are not understood. And predicting is where students deliberate on what is implied in the text and make connections to prior knowledge. As I mentioned in the previous slide, it's been coined the Fab 4. And that's what they use to refer to these strategies. They called it the Fab 4 because each one individually is a powerful key to understanding. However, when you put them all together and use them all as one, they become that much stronger as a unit. A connection would be similar to a band. It might be full of musicians who individually can play instruments beautifully, but when they put them all together, they create this masterpiece of of music. So that's why they call it the Fab Four, because they're great individual, but together we really get to that deeper learning. So as teachers, you all already understand that teaching each strategy individually is going to be quite a task. So you're going to understand that also when you're going to put them all together, it's going to be pretty challenging. And that is why this practice is so powerful. It's not an easy one to get to, but with lots of practice, you're going to see higher levels of understanding. So rather than just teaching the practice and throwing it at students immediately, you want to engage them in a scaffolding approach. The approach that's most common is I do, we do, you do. You're going to see at the bottom here, at the bottom right-hand corner, the purple link, Dominique is going to also put it in the chat, are just some reciprocal teaching cards. Typically, these are great for when we're in person. Eventually, we'll get back there and maybe you can print these out, laminate them, but these cards are good to show students so they can practice the roles and know exactly what they're supposed to be doing, depending on the role that they have been assigned. Okay, so now we're going to look at an example on how you can use this practice of reciprocal teaching digitally in a whole group setting. We're going to use the platform of Google Jamboard, which I'm sure you've seen a lot of. The great thing about Google Jamboard is you can use the same platform for multiple different purposes. You're going to notice that this example is going to center around a photograph. And the reason that it does that is because this is how we would practice it in a whole group setting. Typically, once your students know how to do this, you're going to use content-related topics. But just so they're concentrating on just the task, we're going to focus on a photograph today. So this is an example. As you can see in the middle, those are the directions on what they're going to be doing. So they're going to participate in a digital whole group reciprocal teaching practice. And typically you're going to have 4 students in each group. You're not going to usually do reciprocal teaching in a whole group setting, but like we said, you're going to have a lot of practice in order to get, your best bang for your buck. So in the middle is the instructions, and then we just divided our whole group into 4 different groups or sections according to birth month. So January through March, we would tell our students, okay, if your birthday's January to March, you're going to be predicting. April through June, it's down there is summarizing. July through September is questioning, and October through December is clarifying. And again, we have the directions for what each task will do. The next slide is what they would see. This is the photograph we're using. And then now you'll see what a completed Jamboard is with this reciprocal teaching. I'm going to give you a moment to look over that.
And while they are looking over it, Dominique, do you mind sending me the link to your presentation so we can link it up, as well as I can post it in the chat as well, so our audience members, they can follow along and click on those links.
Yes, ma'am. I'll do that right now.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're going to notice that the pink sticky notes are connected to the blue ones. That's because the blue sticky notes role was questioning. So they're asking a question, and the clarifier roles were pink. So they're just trying to answer that question. And the whole point of reciprocal teaching is to really get to that deep level of understanding. And so they don't have to worry about getting a correct answer. It's just a way of getting students to really dig deep into whatever the question is, whatever the content is, and to look at it in a different way and possibly see things they wouldn't have noticed had they not played these different roles. So that is an example using a Jamboard, how you could do it whole group. Back to here. Okay, so as with any new practice that we're going to add into our big old bag of our teaching craft, now you're going to see how you can reflect upon either before, during, or after implementing reciprocal teaching. As you eventually plan to hopefully deliver this strategy with your students, again, it's important to make that time to reflect. Here are some questions on the screen that you can see of things you might ask yourself and your colleagues to help guide that planning. How could students benefit from participating in this reciprocal teaching strategy? How do we get students to the point where they can teach each other? And then what would be a benefit from doing this reciprocal teaching activity no matter the content of the class? So this is just there for you to reflect back on or to use when you plan in the future. So what's next? In an upcoming PLC, you can use this resource that, again, Dominique is going to link up in the chat. You all are getting really, really proficient at using digital platforms for planning now as well. Again, what we're used to is being in the building and doing these PLCs, but whatever platform you're using for your PLCs, whether it be Google Meets or Microsoft Teams, Zoom, you could pull this form up and use that as a planning guide to dive deeper into reciprocal teaching. This also is something that you could use to help you dive deeper into really understanding how to incorporate reciprocal teaching. There's a link on here. Again, I think Dominique's going to put that in there. That's a video that will help you and your colleagues see it in action in different classrooms and different level classrooms of reciprocal teaching happening in action. And here's a turn and talk that you all could use with your colleagues as well. And that is the conclusion of this. We wanted to open the floor if there's any questions. You'll notice also our website is on there, and there's a plethora of resources that you can use from our departments in MTSS.
Awesome. And I am now including the link as we speak on the schedule. So all of those resources will be included on that schedule as well. And I am doing that right as we speak right now. Kind of multitasking pretty here. Oh, there we go. So now it is linked to that schedule. And April, she has a comment that the reciprocal teaching cards have great questions and sentence stems. So is that used in all content areas or some?
Yes, you can use it in any content area. As you see, we just used it with a photograph. But it's a way to get students to dig deeper into whatever content level that the focus is in. It started originally with reading, but us teachers have gotten pretty crafty over the years, and we've been able to be creative in our teaching, and so it can go across all contents.
Awesome. I think that is all. Yep, I'm just making sure that your slides are linked, and I see that people are in there now hopping in and accessing those resources. Do you have anything else you would like to share with the audience that are tuning in?
Well, just that, again, like Dominique shared, she shared the slide with our whole department. We are here with open arms to help collaborate with you and your teammates on how to continuously grow in our craft of teaching, especially now that we're doing this digitally. We've had to rely on lots of other departments ourselves, and we're all just trying to work together. So we're here. Contact us anytime. We'd love to collaborate.
We can collaborate and show you how to use reciprocal teaching with different subjects and a variety of ways as well in classrooms. So just reach out to us.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies, so much. You all have a great day.
Thank you.
All right. So let's see. Very awesome session that we have had. And if you want to take a look at their presentation and reciprocal teaching, those slides are accessed or are linked to the schedule as we speak. speak right now. Definitely the model, the I do, we do, you do. Take a look at that slide, the reciprocal teaching cards. That is on there as well that you can use with your students, and that is a PDF that is linked. Great questions, clarifier, predictor, and more that you can find on that resource. So let's hop over one more time. Let's talk about how you can access the schedule. You can go to the NTI tool page, which I believe now we are all used to going to the NTI tool page, and you can click on the live virtual learning schedule, and it will be linked right here. I do know that we had a question before about accessing the previous week's schedule, and the great news is that that is linked up here for you. So the week of August 17th, August 10th, and August 7th, that is linked on the schedule right there for you. What is coming up next in about 10 minutes is, as our panel is joining, is let me go back really quick, is the opportunity to respond. So they talked about reciprocal teaching HYP. Now the upcoming session is talking about opportunity to respond HYP for distance learning. Another presentation by our MTSS friends, as well as fact-checking and anti-racist resources by Nancy, and then leveraging AP Classroom. So again, those sessions are very exciting. That is coming up for you. So again, let's take a look at the Twitter universe. There are I'm seeing the notifications are growing about that have tweeted to the JCPS Dig In hashtag, and that's just an amazing math teacher I have personally experienced and had him in as a student teacher. He was my student mentor, or my teacher mentor at Verda High School. Again, Kathleen, she has tweeted to the JCPS Dig In hashtag about, again, sharing is caring, and how they, Miss Walvick, sorry if I mispronounced that name, has shared with Lake Elementary. So quick tech hack for playing music on your waiting room. It works perfect and is so easy. So if you have any questions about that, again, you can learn from Twitter. It is a great PLN to learn from. Any more Minecraft resources, STLP. Kathleen, she is shouting out that 30 out of 32 schools have committed to STLP in 2020-2021. So that is a huge and an amazing announcement that pretty much almost every single school have committed to STLP, and STLP is a great resource for students because it is one project-based learning, and they are creating different items in their classroom using tech, and that will show you the 6 goals of STLP. They will develop activities, provide leadership, experience, multi-age collaboration, closely ties with the backpack, forming learning partnerships, and again, integrate technology and develop instructional activities with integrate technology and benefit the school. Yes, school and communities. That is a strong suit of STLP because it will benefit both the school and communities. So shout out to Zone 2 crew, and shout out to Kathleen Seaver and Jim Unger for leading that zone on the digital innovation team. Awesome Salvage training this morning. I know Stephen Durham, he was the host this morning, and Salvis was on there. Hello, my name is Salvis and a learning company. So that show, if you have any questions about Salvis, that will be available on demand. We will upload it to the YouTube channel and add it to the Salvis playlist, because now, yes, they do have a playlist, and you can look for those resources that will be available to you. a session this morning by Chan the Man. He did an amazing job on updating you on those Google Meet updates and those Microsoft Teams updates as well. FYI, we do have the blur coming. If you have it, that is great. I know I have it. Some of my colleagues do not. But it is working on a slow rollout to where our people will receive the blur and their Google Meets. And I do know that several people, if not all, I do know all, will now be able to see up to 49 people in their Google Meet. So that is, again, you will see more and more updates. Yes, how much fun they have creating music, and that is family. That's super nice. All right, so let's jump out over. Yes, Bo and Kelly are there. How are you all? Good.
Good. How are you?
Good. I know we're 5 minutes early, but if you don't mind, we can start early, or we can wait and we can talk for 5 minutes and then you can start.
Oh, we can go ahead and get started. That sounds great.
Yeah, okay. Yep. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you all. Bo.
You have to coach me on how to share. Do I go to the dots?
Yes.
And then share screen?
Yep. You go to the 3 dots, and then you'll click on share screen. Yep, and then you want to click on hide.
Okay, are we good?
You gotta turn on your closed captioning. This is the black bar thing.
Yep. And then hit allow. Go back to that down arrow. And then you want to go to large. And then go back again one more time to that down arrow. And you want to move it to the top. So right now it's at the bottom. And then the very last thing is hit hide. So we can see all of your beautiful slides. It's over here in the white in the middle. Yep.
Yeah.
You're good to go.
All right. Perfect. So welcome everybody. I am Kelly Hagan. I'm the MTSS Engagement Resource Teacher for the middle school zone. And my partner in crime today is Bo Burkett, and he is the MTSS resource teacher for the high school zone. So today we're going to get started with just discussing the components of the multi-tiered systems of support as a whole. And you'll see on this graphic that how each of our pieces of work connect to each of our 6 systems within JCPS. So everything from data-driven decision-making to addressing those academic, social, emotional, and behavioral development of all of our students as well. So the MTSS department is broken down into several different components. First of which is going to be MTSS Academic, and that department is supporting schools by ensuring teachers are providing all students with academic supports that include differentiation, personalization, and enrichment activities that are guided by the Universal Design for Learning Principles, or the UDL. Their main focus is on Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions and supports, so kind of the old RTI mindset. And the leader of that department is Donna Lawson. So if you need to contact that department, that would be who you would reach out to. Then going over underneath the culture and climate, we have MTSS Behavior. And the MTSS Behavior Department supports schools in implementing school-wide behavior systems and frameworks. The 2 frameworks used by JCPS are going to be the Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports, which is PBIS, and the Behavior Support System Model that aligns with that and the restorative practice. So additionally, that team supports schools in understanding and utilizing classroom management strategies, and that department is led by Sandra Hensel. So if you need assistance with that. And then the MTSS re-engagement department is led by Naomi Brahim, which their support supports students who are transitioning back into their home schools from our special schools, such as Minor Daniels Academy and Breckenridge Metro. That leads us to the MTSS engagement department, which our goal is to increase student achievement by equipping teachers with the high yield pedagogical practices to maximize student engagement. So essentially, we're looking at tier 1 instruction as opposed to those tier 2 and tier 3. So really focusing on that instructional core to increase engagement and reduce those unwanted behaviors for students. And today, all of our work is folded under these 6 toolkits, which focus also on the work of John Hattie. If you have access through the digital learning channels agenda today, you'll have linked to this actual page, and this graphic is a link to our MTSS engagement website, where you can have access to all of the different toolkits and all the information that's provided within them as well. And our department is broken down by zone, as you can see here, under the leadership of Dr. Naomi Brahim. So the work of today, which is opportunities to respond, falls under the feedback toolkit, which is toolkit number 6. And the definition of feedback, as you can see here, is information provided by an agent. So a peer, a teacher, a parent, somebody's experience about one aspect of one's performance or understanding. John Hattie really focuses on the most powerful form of feedback is when the students, coming from the students to the teacher. And we don't mean that as kind of that reflective piece of how did our lesson go today, but taking the opportunities to actually hear how students are responding to those questions that we're asking as educators, as to what they understand, where they're making errors, and when they have those misconceptions, and how we are adjusting our teaching practices to move forward. So the success criteria of this high yield practice is to provide frequent opportunities to respond that result in feedback through a variety of student responses. Some common ones are going to be those individual responses, peer-to-peer, or that student-to-student discourse, or one that we see a whole lot of is that whole group choral response. And these can be done either verbally, non-verbally, or written. So the definition of an opportunity to respond is the interaction between the teacher's academic prompt and a student response. So the teacher is either going to ask a question or give a prompt, and the student's going to respond to that. So this also gives an opportunity for not only the teacher to get that feedback, but to also formally assess the student learning throughout that process. So our purpose for today is going to develop a little bit of a deeper understanding of the different types of opportunities to respond, and we'll have a resource for you here a little bit later. And we'll be determining various types of opportunities to respond to integrate into lessons, whether it be brick and mortar or distance learning. So this is always a fan favorite cartoon of mine because I can think of many times where, as an educator, I'm super excited about the lesson that I have planned. I really feel like my students are going to be engaged, and I turn around after getting it all set up, and half the class is disengaged. So just thinking about what we can do to change the culture of these classes so that the students are just as excited about what's going to happen the next day, as opposed to the teacher being the only one that is excited. So I'd like to do a little bit of interaction if we can. I know that there's a little bit of a delay. But in the chat, if you can answer the following questions about a scenario that I'm going to put on the board. So how many times in the scenario did the teacher give students an opportunity to respond? And then what were the various strategies used to get students to respond? So those are our two questions. And our scenario is: shortly after science class started, the teacher announced, "We will have a small block of ice and the same size block of butter. Tell your neighbor which one would melt first." A few seconds later, the teacher said, "Please write down in one sentence an explanation for your answer." A few minutes later, the teacher told students to share with their neighbor what they had written. Shortly thereafter, the teacher called on one student to tell their class her answer. The teacher then asked the class to raise their hand if they agreed with the answer. Then the teacher asked students to give a thumb down if anyone disagreed, and so on. So looking at this scenario, just think about how many opportunities to respond the teacher gave. And this scenario can be done virtually or within the classroom. And what are those different types of opportunities as well?
Is this my cue, Kelly?
Yep, it is.
Okay. All right. So how many times in the scenario did the teacher give students an opportunity to respond? If you counted correctly, then you should have counted six times. And there were various strategies used throughout. So the teacher used talk to the neighbor twice. They used a written response, individual verbal response, nonverbal responses such as raising their hands and thumbs down and so on. And here are all of the six highlighted. But okay, so when do we use opportunities to respond? I'm going to say OTRs for short, but you can reuse them in a variety of ways: when promoting classroom participation and academic engagement, during direct instruction, when teaching specific behaviors to individual students or groups of students, when checking effectiveness of instruction, when checking how well students understand the academic content. And there's 5 steps on how to do it. Number 1, identify what's being taught. Step number 2, choose how the students will respond. Ideally during lesson planning, not spur of the moment, although both of those are valuable. But ideally you want to be planning these OTRs up front. 3, determine whether students will have the opportunity to respond individually or in groups. 4, pose a question or command related to instruction. And 5, reinforce correct responses and prompt students to make changes and corrections. How to increase effectiveness. Include OTRs or opportunities, for students to make corrections if they answered incorrectly. Continue to provide feedback for both correct and incorrect answers. Ask all students to respond to each question if they were working individually. This increases OTRs for all of the students. Increase the rate of questioning, asking to both individual students and groups of students. Allow students time to process information before responding. allow students time to discuss answers with partners or groups before responding, and provide verbal praise and reinforcement for correct group and individual responses. So if you look at this chart, here's 5 different types of frequent responses, all the way from oral responding on the left end to action responses on the right end. And if you look within each one of these groups, there are verbal responses such as choral response, there are written responses such as a think, write, share, and there are nonverbal responses such as students giving hand signals. But just take a minute and look at which one do you use the most frequently. And right now we have to think of NTI world, and we also have to think of once students come back and we're actually in person, which one of these is your go-to? So as our team went and observed classrooms throughout the entire district, regardless of whether it was elementary school, middle school, or high school, we basically saw the same thing in each classroom for the most part. And that was that teachers were using individual responses and verbal responses. So that's the classic teacher teaching at the front of the room. The teacher asks a question, a student raises their hand, answers the question, the teacher gives feedback, and so on. And then the lesson continues. But there were very few opportunities for kids to talk or discuss ideas together. There were even fewer opportunities for kids to write about what they saw. Mainly what we're seeing is just individual verbal throughout all classrooms, throughout all levels, throughout JCPS. And so our goal as a department then is we want to increase not only the number of OTRs used throughout a lesson, but also the types and varieties that are used throughout the lesson. So we created this little spreadsheet. Actually, it's not a little spreadsheet, it's a humongous spreadsheet. And we can't go through it all today, obviously. But it's a list of about 70 different OTRs. And they're sorted between OTRs that would be appropriate for the beginning of class, the middle of class, the end of class, and there's some hyperlinks in here. And you can have access to this resource if you access our presentation online, or if you just email me or Kelly, we can send it to you. But I highlighted a few in green that I thought would be appropriate for NTI. So obviously one of them that's really easy, it's nonverbal, is fist to 5, which you can just ask students to rate their understanding of a given topic. 0 meaning that they don't understand anything at all, and 5 meaning that they're ready for a summative test. That's really easy. Another one would be a card sort. And this is one that we tried to use during a professional development session. Obviously, we can't provide cards for you. We don't mail cards for you in the mail and have you sort them and then mail it back. But there are online tools. And one that I wanted to show you is a tool called MindMeister. And so this is what the assignment looked like at the beginning. And what we did, Kelly and I, we listed all of the OTR strategies on the left and right side. And then we were going to have teachers sort these OTRs by whether they were individual, peer-to-peer, or whole class. And then within those categories, whether they were verbal, nonverbal, or written. So basically, response cards, that would be an individual nonverbal response. And so what they could do is they could just pick this little guy up and move him to the nonverbal, and now it's sorted. And so the answer key then looks something like this. But it's a different way to assess students, it's a different way to engage students, and it's possible to do it online. Another good tool is Nearpod, which I don't know yet. I'm trying to learn it now. Thank you, April Bemker, for introducing me to that. But we're trying to create a presentation now with Google Slides. But Nearpod is really good because it will give students an opportunity to respond and an opportunity for you to assess them during your Google Slide presentation. So instead of giving your entire presentation and waiting to the end to assess, you can give them a couple slides, ask them a question, and then the students can answer that question, and you can get real-time data so that you can I guess, discuss any types of answers or misconceptions that they have. But it's a really nice tool. I wish I could show you now, but I just figured with the delay that it wouldn't work very well, so
And
we chose not to.
I just want to piggyback off that. Nearpod is a great tool, and it is approved for us to use with our students. Another great tool, if anyone has not looked at, is the Smart Suite Learning Online, and you can get that all within your Google Drive. And it has like the card sorting and very familiar or similar to Nearpod as well. So those are again two great tools that are easy or that you can use, and it is approved for our students to use as well. So, when you mentioned tech, I kind of perked up because that's my field and that's what I love to do and to use and to help teachers with tech in their classroom. But yes, both of those tools, those are great to use.
So if you want to take over now, you can.
No, you can handle it. You're great.
Okay, all right. Okay, so just a couple more slides then. One, culturally responsive considerations is provide positive responsive feedback regarding student responses and participation, incorporate students' responses, ideas, languages, and experience, prompt students with effective and cognitive feedback, validate student contributions while also clarifying and expanding their statements, and creating multiple opportunities for students to respond using dialogue. Excuse me. Okay, so exceptional child education considerations. Increase your opportunities to respond. Ideally, we're striving for 3 per minute, which sounds like a lot. However, if you think of all of the different ways you can have kids respond, one of the ways that, an example I gave when I did a PD for the district was most people know what 4 corners is. So if you have students answer a question by going to a corner, that's a nonverbal response. And then in that corner, if you have them write maybe on a whiteboard why they chose that corner, that would be a non-written or a written response, excuse me. Then you could give them time to discuss with people in that corner about their ideas, which would be peer-to-peer verbal. And then you could take it a step further and have students switch corners and maybe justify their position or their answer or decision with another student, which would be another peer-to-peer verbal. And then they could go back to their seat and write about what they learned from students in their own corner and also students from a different corner. So within that one scenario, you're looking at potentially 5-6 responses just in that one activity. So I think that a lot of planning goes into play here, especially up front at the beginning on how you can incorporate these. But if you get creative and you plan up front, then it's definitely possible to hit that 3 per minute. Next one, consistent progress monitoring and corrective feedback in a timely manner. Relevant, specific, modeled, positive, and encouraging feedback. Plan for and provide multiple means of engagement through choice and relevant, authentic activities. In PBL considerations, deeper learning, teachers should create many opportunities to receive feedback from students throughout the project. Specific feedback should be given to students to guide next steps. One-on-one and small group conferences should occur throughout the learning process. Rubrics should be used during conferences as a guide to ensure feedback is specific and aimed at desired goals. Formal feedback checks should be scheduled in advance, and many lessons should be used throughout the project to help clear up common misconceptions and difficulties held by the majority of students. So with this, a lot of people think PBL, you create a project and you give the students a rubric and you just let them go off and do their own thing. But the ideal way to do project-based learning is check-ins throughout the process, regular scheduled check-ins, but also informal check-ins. And then anytime you see all of the students struggling with a particular area, that's the time for you as the teacher to step in and give a mini lesson to clear up any misconceptions and keep kids moving in the right direction. So here are our toolkits, and just like Amy and Dominique mentioned, these are linked. So you can click on these and it will bring up our website, which looks different.
So this is actually our new website for the MTSS department. It's the one-stop shop for multi-tiered systems of support. So you will find on the website now all of the MTSS academic, MTSS behavior, and MTSS engagement resources. And so it's a little bit different than the initial website that was referenced at the beginning, which is just the toolkits, which is this one here. So just by clicking at the top and clicking engagement, it'll take you directly to that engagement toolkit website, where you can navigate through and get all of those resources for the different high yield practices that fall within each of the toolkits and the supporting systems as well.
So I believe that is it. There's our references, which you can read at during your free time. And that's all we've got.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. I tell people this wasn't a presentation to miss, and I was right. I'm just joking. But seriously, this was a really informative presentation that you all shared, filled with many resources, as always.
All right. And like Dominique and Amy said, we are always available to collaborate, and we're always willing to share any more resources that we can as we come across, or just an email or a virtual office swing by away.
You said virtual office, and that's that's our new normal right now.
It is.
Just a virtual office, and I love your background, by the way.
Oh, that's actually my messy house behind me.
It doesn't
So
look
happy you can't see the mess part.
it doesn't look messed up. Sounds good. Well, there were a few comments in the chat as well, and Rebecca Reynolds, she said that she loved the sorting idea as well. And another great way of using those sorting cards is, Google Drawings. You can build, a card sort, or with Google Jamboard as well, if any teachers want to use that card sort as well. And then April, she just clarified what the Smart Learning Suites Online, and that is going up for board approval on the 29th. So after September 29th, that's when it will be approved for all students to use as well.
All right. Well, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you for starting early as well. Very much
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you. Have a good one. Happy Monday.
You too.
All right. So again, thank you for still hanging in there with us. And this time, I am going to check the schedule. Yes, great job, Bo and Kelly as well. So what is coming up next is fact-checking and anti-racist resources, and their agenda, their presentation that is linked, Nancy's, is linked to the schedule for you to go back and review. So you can click on that presentation and kind of get a sneak peek of what is to come in the next 8 minutes. And if you have any questions for myself or the dig-in team, because I know some of them are standing by in the chat to assist, you can feel free to hop in there and let us know your questions, as well as let us know what school or district office you are joining us from. The other thing is Twitter, but I was going somewhere else before Twitter, but my mind just escaped me of where I was going before Twitter, so it will come back to me before we hop over to that. Oh, look at that sweet, beautiful picture. So let's go to the hashtag. Just awesome, great resources that teachers, our SDILs, so our School Digital Innovation leaders, our STCs, everyone in the school, they are sharing their resources that they have and they are using within their school. Another amazing person, Casey Bishop, fifth graders at J-Town Elementary. They are excited to wrap up a social studies unit, one by dipping into their own history. So they will build background knowledge, thorough reading, make personal connections through writing, interview family members, and have student choice for final presentation. So that sounds like an amazing resource to use. That, and sometimes your train of thought will leave you and then it just come right back to you. And my train of thought that I was going to say is that it is a great way to subscribe to the JCPS Digital Learning channel, because you will receive those nice notifications of when we go live, and it will be easy for you to find. And just in case you don't know, we can get to the Digital Learning channel by JCPS Digital Learning. And JCPS Digital Learning, it can right up, because I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure we go there a lot. We do. So that is our Digital Learning channel right there. And you will find all of those videos for you. So again, already, Matt Boca, he just put a training up, about how posting Google Meet recordings in your Google Classroom. And I feel like instead of hearing from me, since we have about 5-6 minutes left, we can watch Matt's video for you.
Hi JCPS, this is Matt Bolka, one of your high school digital innovation leaders, and today we're going to talk about how to upload your Meet recordings from Google Meets to your Google Classroom. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Google Classroom, and I'm going to select whichever one of my classes I want to put this video into. So I'm going to use my example classroom here. So let's click on that. And we're going to post this two different ways. We're going to post it first in our stream. So you can see I am in the stream here. And I'm going to click on share something with your class. I'm going to say, hello, students. This is our meeting from 9/21, which is today. And I'm going to click on add right here. So I want to click on add where that little paper clip is. And I want to find this in my Google Drive. So if I go over to my Google Drive here, just to show you where this folder is, you can see I have my name going like descending order. So my folder that these Meet recordings would be under would just be called Meet Recordings. If I click on there, you can see everything that I've recorded on Meet. I've only done one of them, but you will have many, many more, I am sure. So if I come here, remember I click on add, I go to Google Drive, and it's going to give me whatever I recently looked at here, but I don't think it's going to show up there. So I'm going to click on My Drive here. So we're going to click on the My Drive tab, and then I'm going to look for that Meet Recordings folder. So I look for Meet Recordings, and I click on whichever recording I want. Again, I've only got one, so let's click here, and I simply hit Post. And that is how you do that. So if you post it in the stream, as we know, like that there's no way to prioritize what you see at the top or the bottom. So maybe I want to create a specific place where my students always see their Meet recordings for this class. I'm going to go to classwork instead. And you can see I've created a topic where I'm going to keep my class meeting recordings. But let's say you don't have that topic created yet. I'm going to go ahead and delete that for you. So I'm going to hit create. And you can see I can create that topic there. So we'll do Google Meet recordings, and we will add that topic. Now again, you can move this around in topics. So if you click and drag, I can put Google Meet recordings underneath my Microsoft Teams meeting. I can put it all the way at the bottom under my assignments. So that way my students see and they have priority over what assignments I posted first, and then the meetings for the class will be at the bottom. So I'm going to do it that way. And we're going to go to create, and we're going to create a material. So we're not assigning any questions or anything to go along with this, or at least I'm not. You could do that maybe if you want to, but so we're going to call this class meeting, and we said we'll call it 9/21 because that is today, or at least the day that I'm making the video. And please watch this if you were not in class today. Happy Monday. So we're going to go through the same process here. We're going to click on add. We're going to go to Google Drive. We're going to make sure that we're pulling from my drive right here. So we go to my drive. We click on meet recordings. Again, we click into that folder and we select the meeting we want to post. One thing to just be careful about here, over where it says topic on the right-hand side, I want to make sure that I put it in that Google Meet recordings topic. That way my students can see it there and have access to it from that topic. When I hit post, you can see if we scroll to the bottom, class meeting of 9/21 has been created and is in there. So if we click on that, our students can watch that video. Thank you so much. Please email us if you have any questions, and I hope you have a great day.
Awesome. And that was another great resource and a tip that you can use if you need it on how to post those Google Meet recordings in your Google Classroom. All right, so our next session again is by Nancy, and she will be talking to us today about fact checking and anti-racist resources. Hi, Nancy, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well.
Good. So without further ado, I can turn it over to you. I know we're really looking forward to your presentation.
I hope so. Okay, I'll pull up my slides here.
Okay.
And let's get back to the beginning of it. Okay, are we all ready to go?
We are.
All right. Well, welcome. My name's Nancy Chiara. I'm the metadata librarian for JCPS, and I'm going to spend the next 25 minutes or so sharing some ideas and some resources about information and how we can judge its truthfulness. And I want to touch just very briefly on some anti-racist resources as well. So first, we should talk about why this topic deserves our attention. So there are many reasons why the topic of information literacy is so important, especially in our society where we are just absolutely bombarded with technology and informational outlets. In particular, our district's policies and guiding principles include skills such as identifying, evaluating, analyzing, and summarizing reliable information, and also assessing the credibility and accuracy of those sources. We can mitigate this somewhat by steering students to our online databases that have sources that have been vetted and evaluated. But that doesn't address the need for students and adults to be able to evaluate what they encounter in social media and televised information sources. The job of educating students about information literacy has typically been the job of the school librarian, and they address these issues regularly. But just as students face information sources pretty much everywhere, they need to have these skills and concepts reinforced by their classroom teachers. Educators need to be well versed in evaluating information themselves so they can better guide their students. So what's up with the news? I think we've all seen that people talk about this one goes left, this one goes right. My links kind of disappeared in here.
Hi, Nancy, and I'm sharing your screen for you as well.
Oh, okay. Well, here's I think sometimes we think fake news is something that's like kind of current or a new phenomena. But here, the Library of Congress came across this photo over here of Ulysses S. Grant sitting on his horse looking very soldierly. It was credited of 1902, and actually the person that came up with it or developed it was actually the nephew of Matthew Brady, the well-known photographer of the Civil War. But as you can see, it's actually a composite of these three pictures. They didn't have a lot of pictures of Grant while he was in the midst of fighting. He just didn't want to take the time for pictures, and it just was not exactly, cameras were hard to come by, and there weren't that many photographers. But after the war, people wanted to have some kind of a record, so if you look really closely, it's his head on this horse in this background. So I just want to kind of share that to show that this isn't something that, and there's examples of manipulation of data and news that go far back beyond even before the Civil War. So when we look at our current situation, I think this chart right here kind of helps kind of define where everybody is. This group, they have developed a chart where they measure how reliable a news source is or a news story, and which way does it slant. So over here on this key over here, you can see this green box up in the top is considered the most reliable news sources. And by that, they've looked at the instances of inaccuracy and just complete things that completely weren't right or true. So the lower on the chart it goes are where you're going to find the more inaccurate news stories or the most misinformation. And then depending on if it slants left or right, you can tell that by where it is on the chart. And you can zoom in closer and kind of look for your news sources. But we also might be thinking, okay, who's doing the chart? How are they coming up with this? So this chart was maintained by a group of media experts, and the group intentionally includes individuals that have personal views that cover the range from left and right. So the articles are all reviewed by 3 people in order to get as objective as possible of a rating. So lastly, I would suggest that relying on one news source, regardless of how credible it is not a great idea. It's better to review information from a variety of sources, although I would aim for the sources that are in the green box. And while it might be interesting to have varying opinions, because these are kind of slant on both sides, it's important to know that the sources on which they're basing their opinions is accurate information. So you can always go back and visit this chart and kind of play around with it and see where your news outlets kind of tend to fall. So next. So more information on the Wild West of info and how information gets twisted and manipulated in the news. And I just put this up because this book, if you're interested, this book, it does a really, really good job. Much better than I can do in a 15-minute, or 20-minute talk. It was published in 2018, so it's relatively recent. And the FPL, the LFPL has some copies if you're interested in getting it. He does a really good job too. Mr. Barclay does a good job of staying apolitical. His examples and explanations he tends to take from history, although you can see connections in our current news today based on what he's coming up with. His interview here is really interesting. It talks about how social media impacts misinformation. And there's a transcript there. Again, I'm not going to take the time to look at it. You can kind of go back and revisit it. The SCRAP test I am going to show you guys. The CRAP test has been around for a long time, and that's a lot of JCPS librarians use it as a way to help students remember what they should be looking at. So it was usually just this bottom part here. And then most recently, the S has been added because we do know that, understanding what your personal biases are and your personal slant can impact how you determine some of these. It can kind of determine how you look at the purpose or the relevance. So it's important to kind of add that particular component into any evaluation that you're doing. And then this one right here, ways to spot misinformation. This is from a group, this Storyful. This company, actually, that's their job. They go out and fact check. And they've shown a way, well, let me scroll down here. It's kind of stuck. Anyway, if you get, there it goes. It follows the kind of the why, what, when, where, and who kind of method of how to evaluate information as you're getting it. And this site in particular, part of it is blocked because you have to pay for it, but the free section is really, really interesting where they go through, especially how they decide or how they evaluate images. They show how they check images for being retouched and adjusted on dates and different clues they can use to see if an image has been misplaced, used in the wrong story, or used in a manner in which that doesn't represent the story that it actually was supposed to represent. So here's you probably learned about this in school. I did, even back in the 70s. Logical fallacies, ways that information can get a little twisted around or presented in a way that kind of hides the facts. So this link up here will take you to a really large dictionary of just a plethora of different fallacies. But some of the ones I think we see more commonly, this ad hominem, That's where we're going to attack the person. It doesn't really have anything to do with any kind of an issue. It's just basically name calling. Bandwagoning is just joining the fad. I'm going to join on because everybody else is doing it and everybody else I know is following this, so it must be true. Confirmation bias, we see that a lot, like with our news that kind of has slants now, one way or the other. People tend to kind of lean towards those kind of outlets that already agree with what they think. So rather than looking at any kind of a balanced, objective news, people will oftentimes kind of just gravitate towards that news that is reflective of what they already think. The straw man, that takes somebody's argument and then distorts it and then argues about the distortion. Red herrings, that's where they kind of just throw something out, just kind of, detract or mislead somebody away from the relevant question. The correlation with causation, sometimes this one, we see this a lot, where they'll take two unrelated events, but somehow draw a conclusion between these two. And it can be really, can appear really plausible unless you look really closely at, does either these two things really have a whole lot to do with it? Or could a different variable have impacted why something occurred? We already looked at some deceptive images, and those get used a lot. Cherry picking and emphasizing outliers, those are both ways of manipulating data. In this case, you're only presenting the facts that actually back up what you want to show, and emphasizing outliers is again where, and sometimes this can enter in when we have personal stories, because we may have a lot of data that supports one viewpoint, but then there's always going to be those where that don't fit in that large group. But does that necessarily mean that those conclusions based on that large data is inaccurate? I mean, outliers are, they're pretty much going to be there. And I'm not saying we should ignore outliers, but I'm not sure we should base all of our conclusions solely on the small data rather than on the larger data. Oops, I'm just clicking away here. And now I wanted to show you guys some resources that are kind of closer to home. So we're going to start with, of course, I'm a librarian, so of course we're going to have to look at a LibGuide. I do this because a lot of our LibGuides have one-stop shopping where you can find all sorts of information on these fact-checking. So activities you can bring to your students. And they have Atherton, Heather Waters, the librarian there, has developed this Fight the Fake page. And we probably have all heard of Snopes. This one takes all sorts of different stories and reviews them. Sometimes they will do it even before the conclusion has been determined, and they'll continue to update it. So here's one about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I think they were talking about initially, this one had something, here it is. Where'd it go? They changed their page from like a half an hour ago. They had a story in here before that talked about something that she had published back in the 70s, and it kept cropping up because they were only using bits and pieces of it. So it has different evaluations from truthful to almost true to mostly true, and kind of points out what's true and what's not. And I think it's still thinking to load, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to another one. Factcheck.org is mostly political, but it does cover other things. You can see on the right-hand side, there's a section here on coronavirus coverage and science stuff and Facebook initiatives. And they're pretty good about being apolitical as well. As far as not picking a side. Then here they'll go through and they'll comment on some of the fact-checking they've done on Biden and inaccurate things that he may have said, and they go right on here and start talking about Trump and some of the inaccuracies that he said. And they're pretty good about simply looking for misinformation, not necessarily focusing on anything in particular that they want to have an agenda. Procon.org is not so much a fact-checking site. It's more of a place where you can get information on both sides of the story. So if you want to know the pros and cons of what's going on with, I'm just clicking the first one here, with the election, it's going to give you the issues and who says what about those particular issues. And it really does present the information much more like in a debate format. Or if we want to talk about gun control, it's going to show what people say for and what they say against. And it gives, and like I said, this is sort of if you've done the debates, this is pretty much how those are outlined. It kind of would be helpful in a classroom because it's an example of how you can argue productively. And I use the term argue more in a legal framing rather than in the shouting and hostile way. But it kind of shows how students can disagree about something and how they should disagree and how they can present their side and back it up with some information and some facts. Let's see. PolitiFact is one of my favorites. They'll pull up all sorts of stories, and then they have this little truth-o-meter over here. So they will show, and you can kind of get this just as a quick peek, that this statement was false. When they really find something, they have a pants on fire if it's really like completely not true. So, and then they have a mostly false. And if you actually clicked on here and read through the articles, it would point out what was true and what wasn't. So this is kind of a helpful way of looking at information, and I kind of like the tongue-in-cheek evaluations with the little pants on fire icon. The last one I'll take a peek at real quick is this all sides. This one's really helpful because it puts the left, the center, and the right on a specific topic. So if you're trying to show your students how to like look and compare, this is a pretty user-friendly site where it already kind of divvies it up for you and kind of makes those kind of descriptors so it's easier to figure out which is which. I thought it was interesting. If you go through and look at these sources, these actually line up very well with where they were placed on that first chart that I showed you. So you'd find often the BBC tended to be right down kind of right down the middle. And so it's kind of interesting to see that these are actually kind of following the same trend that that chart that showed where they leaned. It kind of just verifies that chart. Okay, let's go back here. So this facetious, this is actually a little game, and it's kind of entertaining, and it might be a good way for, I mean, you can test yourself, but you can also use it at school. It's got different levels, and what it does, it just pulls up different stories, and you have to decide whether that story is true or not, and then it tells you whether, and they find some pretty off-the-wall stuff. So it gives you this story to look at, and so it talked about this guy who supposedly went back to his burning car to light a cigarette, and you want to say, is this true or not? That sounds pretty far-fetched to me. You click here. And up, it's not fake, it's a news story. And so then they tell you where they got it from, and you can continue. So this kind of just is a nice way to kind of gauge where you might think stories fall and to find out how good you are at actually recognizing them. Fight the Fake is another, this is LSU. They have offered some different methods for evaluating information. So you can use the ACT UP method, or you can use the I'm vain method. These are all just little acronyms to make you remember what you should be looking for when you're trying to evaluate information. And there's a lot of good stuff on this website. You can kind of go back through and look through there. And then the last one, this is developed by the University of Southern California at, I think, Santa Barbara. And they have this whole webpage is designed to talk about like fake news and the history of it. And it really goes back to like, back into the 1800s when newspapers were kind of designed just to sell. I mean, I'm not sure a whole lot's changed, where they would show different pictures that were misrepresenting. I mean, it's just kind of an interesting place to kind of go back through and to kind of remember that what we're experiencing today is, yellow journalism has been around for a long time. So all we have now is we just have more access, which just puts more onto the consumer to make sure that they're evaluating and they're not just sort of, is that what's, kind of was watching the news then news without kind of thinking about it. So I think, what can we do now after we've kind of looked through this really hurriedly? So what you can do is you can audit your information seeking practices. You can, are you getting information from one source or sources that reflect only one point of view? Maybe you should add some other sources to your list and try to get a bigger picture. This will let you think critically about how you really think and also provide a clearer rationale to support your views. It would also be a really good idea to reflect on your personal biases. If you can identify your tendencies, you can be more objective in your thought process, and also add diverse voices to your information sources. This will add dimension and a perspective and give you a broader context of what is in the news. And one important step is to model and teach these to your students. Our students are growing up in a world that bombards them with information, and we all know the quality of that information covers everything from outright lies and inadvertent misinformation, and hidden in there is accurate and mostly unbiased reporting of information. But I think it's only going to get worse, and we need to really start when they're young so that this becomes an ingrained skill. And we need to foster skepticism and questioning and guide students on how to actually find the answers. So that was the really, really quick talk on how to do fact checking. And of course, if you ever need any questions, just ask your school librarian or fire a question to LMS. So now I'm going to take just a bit of a shift and just briefly cover some anti-racist resources that are out there. And I also think that Rachel Klein from DEP, she might be in the chat if you have any questions. And I'm only skimming the surface here, not because this topic isn't important, but because there are people that are better able to cover this topic. These are just a few resources that I think you can kind of start off with. So first, we're going to look at what JCPS has to offer. This Envision Equity, it's a monthly publication that comes out from our Diversity, Equity, and Poverty Division, and it's taking a really long time to load. You probably get a notification, and it's forwarded every month by your school librarian, but just in case, you can go to their website page, and hopefully it would load faster than this.
Nancy.
And there's a lot of, great, I can't access my own GCPS page.
So we are experiencing some internet outage to our data center, so some JCPS websites we cannot get to, unfortunately, right now, but that is probably what is happening with that website. And
Okay.
just FYI, I'm driving in the background for you. I've been able to keep up with you and clicking on those sites, but if you want me to continue to do that, I can, or you
Sure.
can. Okay, sounds good.
That'd be great, because I know I'm talking really, really fast.
No,
but I was trying to put
I'm
a bunch of stuff in a really short amount of time.
Yep. We're
So
good.
yeah, when you get a chance, if you haven't seen this, I know that when you get bombarded by those building all emails, sometimes they kind of get lost in the shuffle. But you can just go to the website and click on these. There's a lot of good resources in there. Some great lesson plans, great lesson ideas. So and there's a bazillion book lists that have been flying around out there. And I'm only going to share a couple. This one right here was from School Library Journal. And it's from the Teen Librarian Toolbox, and you'll be able to access this and kind of just jot through. There's not a whole lot on here because I'm not sure having a reading list that's got like thousands of books on it's all that helpful. But it's got a little bit for little guys. It's got some stuff for children. It's got some stuff for adults, and this might be a good place to start if you're looking for some things that might be helpful to read. And then the other book list that I've included here is from Dr. Kindy. So, and this was actually, I actually took this it was from an article on Oprah magazine. And again, these are the recommendations that he has for books that would be helpful. And Dr. Kindy is a professor at Boston University, and he's spending the 2020-2021 school year as a Francis Cashin Fellow at Radcliffe Institute and the Advanced Study at Harvard. In his book, Stamped in the Beginning, that was published in 2 versions. The original one was in 2016, it was for adults. And then a remix was published this year in collaboration with Jason Reynolds for young adults. And I personally found the young adult version very, very engaging. So here's some other stuff that he suggests that you might want to read. Let's see. I kind of picked this because some of these aren't the ones that you're going to find on the typical, anti-racist book list. So I wanted to show some stuff that you might not come across. Oh, and a lot of these you can get from the public library too, if you're looking for something to get from there. So there we have that. And now let's see what's going on in JCPS, Central High School. Of course, I'm going to their LibGuide. She has the page, Adrienne Lane, the librarian there, has she's got a book challenge, Read Woke challenge. So she's got a list of some great titles for kids to read, and then if they read so many books and complete by a certain date. But actually, I think the adults and our educators, if you haven't been reading this stuff, here's a great place to find some young adult books to read. And like I said, and a lot of the school LibGuides have information like this on there. And then 2 more places that I wanted to share is the Smithsonian. The National Museum of African American History and Culture, they have a really, really good website, as you would expect, that covers all sorts of, you can, even though it doesn't seem all that long, there's so many internal links, and it's just full of information and other things to read and links to other people's ideas and some videos. And there's Dr. Kindi. So this would definitely be a good place that you could use, and you could also take your students there. It's got some activities in here embedded, some questions. There's just so much stuff in here that, it would take, you could spend an hour just kind of going through and describing all these things. So that would be a really, really good resource to use just for yourself and also for your students. And then lastly, we have this website that, especially the part on the fundamentals and the plan stage, there's a lot of just background information here, with links and definitions and just different data. And also the plan section in particular. These had, if we wanted to look at just one topic, it has just lists and lists and lists of resources that are surrounded around a certain topic. So this would be really, really a good place for you to go to look for information if you have a certain topic you want to use in class, or if you're just interested in it personally. So that, and then these copies down here, these are just more, I figured I probably should have some books that were related to education, although CAST isn't specifically an education book. These others are, and they probably would be a good place, if you haven't read them, to go ahead and dip your toe in there and read these books. So I don't know if there's any questions out there.
Right now, Russ Hockenberry, he said great resources, and Chris Edmund brought deeper learning, and there are quite a few high school librarians in the chat. Janet, of course, she said great job, and Heather Waters and Ashley Freeman, just more and more. Holly, Sarah, more. Adrian was in the chat as well, so a lot of people are in the chat to tune in.
Great. Well, and that pretty much wraps it up for me. And again, if anybody does have any questions, feel free to contact your school librarian or the crew at LMS, and we'd be happy to help you out.
Yeah, and Russ, he did have a question, but you can go to the chat to look that up. But his question was, can we get these resources to some of the folks in the Big Brother All-Stars house? So, because we do know that these resources should be shared far and wide for everyone.
If you access my presentation, all of these are live links, so you should be able to access everything that's in here to come. I knew I wouldn't be able to cover all these in very much in depth. So if you just access, if you can put the Google presentation link in there, then they'll have links to everything that I showed.
Okay, yeah.
And they're all open and all free, so.
Yes. Yeah, and Russ said, yep. And yes, I do know that, Russ. But on a serious note, that these are great resources to share with everyone as well, regardless if they are with JCPS or outside of JCPS.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And I'm going to type in the chat one last time about the direct link to your presentation.
Okay.
Because, again, just amazing resources for everyone to share. All right. Yep, and I am posting it right now. Yep, there's quite a few people already in your presentation to share. All right.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right, take it easy.
All right. So let's see what is coming up next. So what is coming up next is leveraging AP Classroom with 4 amazing panelists and their presentation. It is also linked to the schedule, and my computer is going a little bit slow, so as soon as it gives me the link to Nancy's presentation, I will put it in there for you as well. Let me hit refresh on my screen really quick to see if I have the link to the presentation. And just FYI, you can get the link because it is on the schedule for you. Here we go. And the link to her. I don't want to call her Dr. Nancy. I know a lot of people, she has a doctorate, so I do want to honor that as well. Yes, I agree, Pam. Awesome resources, and thank you. So here is the link to the entire schedule. And again, up next, we do have Leveraging AP Classroom. That is another exciting session that will be coming up next. And don't forget to tweet to the hashtag all that you are learning. Maybe a resource spoke to you during the last presentation that you can share out. Any of those resources, Atherton at Central High School's lip guide was shared, so maybe even sharing that knowledge or that with others. And again, sharing, like I was saying before, sharing is caring, and we do want to share everything that we are learning with others. Yes, I agree. That was an awesome job. So let me turn it over. We do have Allison and Susan. I'm not quite sure if Jason will be joining us, and we can wait on Jason if he will be joining us as well. All right. Allison and Susan, are you there?
I'm here.
Awesome. Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good, good. I didn't know if we were waiting on Jason to join us. If so, I can talk to the audience a little while longer. Oh, there we go.
Looks like there he is.
Just in time, you know. All right. I'm gonna put in the chat your direct link to the presentation. Who is sharing their screen, or do we need any help, or for me to walk you through sharing your screen?
Well, Susan, did you want to do yours first? I figured that might make more sense.
Oh, that's a great idea, Allison. Yeah. I haven't used Hangouts a whole lot, so
Not a problem.
I see that. Just click on the snowman.
Yep.
Okay,
Snowman.
cool. All right.
Yep.
All right.
Then share screen, and then if you are using a Google slide, you can turn on your closed caption if you are using that Google slide.
Okay, how do I do that? Do I do that through the snowman, or do I do it through the presentation?
Through the presentation. So after you share your screen, you'll present, and then click on CC after you start sharing.
Oh, okay. Well, will that appear on the Hangout part, or will that appear on my slide deck?
On your slide deck.
Oh, okay, excellent. Okay, it'll pop up. Okay.
All right, so again, what is coming up next is Leveraging AP Classroom with Jason, Susan, and Allison. So welcome. Please type in the chat what school or district office you are joining us from, and please let us know if you have any questions or comments for our panelists, and we will be able to get them answered for you. All right, without further ado, I will now turn it over to Susan.
Hi, everybody. My name is Susan Smuskowitz, and I'm a teacher at Atherton High School. This is my 18th year teaching, and I'm a National Board Certified teacher. So this is actually my second year teaching AP Language and Composition, and we teach it at the 10th grade level at Atherton. So I'm going to be talking today about how I use the CED when I plan for the year. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And go here. Yep.
I love your mouse.
Oh, thanks. It's an extension.
Yes. And you can hit hide right there in the middle. Yep.
Oh, there you
right
go.
There.
Hide.
And then so click on the down arrow. Yep. And go to top. And then large. So people can, you can click on top, and then you want to click on the down arrow again. Go to left. Yep. And then you can click on CC, and now it will work after you click on CC. It will turn yellow. Yep. You're good to go.
Yay. Okay. All right. So this is my presentation on how to use the AP CED course framework and course at a glance to plan instruction. And again, my name is Susan Smuskowitz, or as my students call me, Miss S. So College Board Access, if you have not used we have to register our students for the exam and whatnot. But I know that sometimes it can be kind of tricky to navigate. And so all you have to do to access any of the things that I'm looking at, we're sharing with you today, you just log into College Board website, you click on the College Board tab, you select the drop-down box and select AP Central, and then you select AP Courses and Exam to view the specific course. So what I'm going to share with you all today is I'm going to talk about the course framework. And so this is just the table of contents in the CED. And specifically, I'm going to concentrate on sharing with you all how I use the course at a glance to plan for the year. So just to give you all an overview, most of you should already know this, but the AP is broken into big ideas and enduring understandings. So those are cross-cutting concepts, and enduring understandings are the long-term takeaways related to the big ideas. And the core skills, of course, those are the essential knowledge statements that are outlined in the CED, and they describe what students should be able to know and do at the end of the course. So I know that my son last year took AP HG, and that is a content-based course, whereas language and composition is a skill-based course. So if you will notice, the skills are what we call recursive. They spiral throughout the unit. So whatever, and the reason why those skills repeat is because we want our students to be able to master those skills and demonstrate them the best way they can, not only in the classroom and for lifelong learning, but also for that exam. So here is a crosswalk outlining the rhetorical, the enduring understandings and the skill categories. And this, to me, it's good because you see all the information on there. But to be honest, the first time I saw this, I thought it was kind of confusing. And I really like the course framework. It's just a little bit more linear to my taste when I'm planning. So this just outlines everything, the enduring understandings for each type of big idea, and then the skill categories for each of those. So here is what I'm going to go over, basically the meat and potatoes of how I plan throughout the year, and also how I design my syllabus. So course at a glance. So this is what this all looks like. And everything that I'm sharing with you today, you can get through AP Central. I just did a bunch of fancy screenshots. So if you notice, it's outlined by units. And I'm going to go over with you all here in a minute how I plan and use this. So, and it's all color coordinated, so it shows you which ones, again, repeat and are recursive. So there are 9 units in all. So what I try to do is I try to put a couple of the shorter units together. So this is how I interpret the framework. So what I do, if you look at it, students, I broke mine down by practice, application, and recursive. So those standards where I had the maroon star, those demonstrate those are where we give students practice for those skills. So I allow my students to we're using digital notebooks right now. And even if we were in the classroom, it would be just a regular composition or a spiral bound notebook where I give them time to practice the skills. And then application is where they actually, the skills that they have learned and understood and practiced, they can apply in their own writing. So if you notice for Unit 1, right here, all they really need to be able to demonstrate is develop a paragraph that includes a claim and evidence supporting the claim. But this is Unit 2. And if you look at Unit 2, this is where that recursive part falls in, where they're repeating that demonstration of that skill. So right now, my sophomores, they just finished writing their summer reading essay. And the past few weeks, we have been working on that skill quite intensely so they can apply that skill to their summer reading essay. So just real quick, I wanted to go with you how I do my lesson planning. I'm a big fan of choice boards. And so here's just a sample lesson of how I've organized this around the Unit 1 standards. So my students always have what's called a central assigned reading, and they do something with that, and that's more for them to turn in weekly. And then the choice boards, they always choose 2 activities that help demonstrate and reinforce that skill. So, for example, had them do a review of, some teachers use soapstone, I use Space Cat to understand the rhetorical situation. And even though that doesn't really fall under this particular standard, it does, because they have to understand the rhetorical situation before they can do anything else. So they have to understand like what writers are doing and what are they using to convey that message. So they read an essay by Siobhan Crawley talking about trigger warnings, and there was a handout on claim and evidence that they had to turn into Google Classroom. So that was the weekly assignment. And then their notebooks, what I had them do was go back to their summer reading book. They had to select a nonfiction text, create an essential question, and find 2 current event articles that help support that essential question. So in their notebooks, to help them reinforce and demonstrate that skill of claim, evidence, and reasoning, they went through their summer reading book, and they found what was the claim, what are 2 pieces of evidence, and then explain how that supports. And this also helps support their writing, because they use this as this is practice, but then they also could use it and finesse it and revise it to use in their summer reading essay. And then I also am a big fan of using visuals. So this is another way that students can demonstrate their understanding as relates to claim and evidence. So real quick, I want to talk about the resources in I almost said Google Classroom, and AP Classroom. So when you click into AP Central, you're going to see this little green box, and that's where you can access your PPCs, the personal progress checks, the quizzes, and the daily videos. So the daily videos are new this year. I used AP Central. I used that last year for the progress checks. And for me, and I believe another teacher, I think Allison, you're going to be talking about that in the presentation. I found that very valuable as a teacher. I would emphasize the progress checks, what they told us in APSI training, that this is formative assessment. This is just feedback to give to you as the teacher in terms of how you can structure your instruction to support student learning. So what I'm planning on doing, my students are actually going to do this week. So here's some ways that you can assign. There's the new daily videos with little quizzes, and also the personal progress checks. So you can assign the videos through AP Central while teaching the unit. So this would be a perfect asynchronous day activity. That's actually what my students are going to be doing Wednesday. I assigned 2 videos, they're like 5 minutes long, a rhetorical situation for review. Or the students can watch videos and take notes. They can do something like one thing they already knew, one thing they learned, one question that they might have, and you can do that as a Google Form exit slip or a notebook entry. Assign skill level quiz that accompanies the video. So there are these short little quizzes with like passages. It's like one question that they can do for reinforcement. And then follow up with the personal progress check, which that's what my students are going to do, and they can reflect on their progress. So I'm a big fan of the what is your grow, what is your glow, and that's what I intend for my students to do, to share once they finish the PPC. Okay, and do I just stop sharing?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much for that portion. Yep, there we go.
All right, so I guess I'm up next. And I just placed the link to mine on the channel as well. I think mine right now is linked in the title, and so we might want to change that.
Okay, I will change it right now for you.
Whenever.
Okay.
I placed the link in the channel though, so it should be in the chat. All right. So my name is Allison Cecil, and I'm a teacher at DuPont Manual High School.
Allison, really quick, I hate to
no, you're
interrupt. Good. Do you mind if you go back and clicking on the CC? That will make your, yep, there we go. And then click allow. You're good to go?
Oh, sorry, I thought I did that.
No, it's okay. Thank you.
So hi again, I'm Allison Cecil. I'm a teacher at Manual, and I have been teaching AP classes for my entire career, which is 19 years. But I've spent most of the time teaching AP Human Geography, and so a lot of the context will be based in AP Human Geography, but it can be generalized to really any advanced placement class. I also serve as moderator of the AP Human Geography teachers community, and probably the most common question I get right now is about AP Classroom. So I'm going to try to address some of those common questions that I've had here recently. And of course, if you're watching and you have any additional questions, just ask in the chat. So one of the great things about using AP Classroom is that you can really focus in on student strengths and weaknesses. And, there was a mention about the personal progress checks. You can use those as a means of just formative assessment. They are intended, as was stated earlier, just for informing the teacher, not necessarily to be used as an actual grade. But you can also administer things like unit exams through AP Classroom. You can create your own questions, or you can also use other questions that are meant to be summative questions that are in the AP Classroom test bank. Now, depending on your course, that will decide like how exactly you would structure any sort of unit test and what sort of topic and skills pairings that you would have, as well as how many things are already in the test bank. Right now, you can only add in your own multiple choice questions. You can assign FRQs, but they have to be the ones that are already there. However, starting this fall, you will be able to write your own free response questions as well. So that is something that they're constantly improving on. So getting back to this particular student, so this is looking at an assessment they took related to the first human geography unit. I, as a teacher, if I click in on that individual student in AP Classroom, I can see not just their overall score, but more importantly, I can identify that, hey, this student did really well overall, but they have weaknesses in spatial concepts and regional analysis. And so that can really help me identify any additional supports that the student may need, and also help the student focus less on that overall percentage score that they received, and instead like, okay, you did pretty well, but there's still work to be done. Alternatively, if the student had not performed so well, there still would be some of the topics that the student would have performed better on than others. So we can focus on those successes and build from those. Like, what did you maybe do differently, both as a teacher and as a student, for those particular topics and skills? And so that's one of the reasons why I like it. You can also dig deeper. So with, for instance, the student and spatial concepts, which one's question on spatial concepts did they answer correctly? So it's going to show you which questions are linked all to that particular topic. In this case, there were just 3 questions on each topic, but you could have however many you thought was appropriate for your students there. So maybe it's stimulus material that threw off the students. So is it a map reading skill that is also impacting how they perform on that topic or not? Again, it's driving as deep as possible to support that student increasing their performance. So this is how it looks once you click on the question. You'll be able to see the question, the topic, the skill, and the other questions. And you, if it wasn't a screenshot, instead if you were actually in AP Classroom, you could click on each of those. It also has for each question, and now I'm showing you one that's publicly available. That's another important point, is that some of the questions in AP Classroom will have a little blue shield next to them. Those questions are not to be assigned in a virtual environment. They also do require the lockdown browser, which makes it at best inconvenient and a technological disaster in most cases to assign them. But also you are violating the agreement that you put your name on when you signed up for AP Classroom, if you assign those questions with the shield when you are in a non-face-to-face setting. So just be aware of that. So the reason I put this question up here is not that you care about this specific question, but instead notice that it does give feedback to the student on the answer. And so this one's incorrect, and here's why it's incorrect. And you can do that for each of the other answer choices. So this is something that you want to consider when you're adding questions of your own to the test bank, is you want to make sure that you also provide that feedback to students to make the data that they're getting as informative as possible. And then I can sort not just by topic, but also by skill. So I just showed you what this looked like. Now in human geography and in most of at least the social science courses, every topic has a main skill pairing, but in other subjects I know it works a little differently. So that could be especially useful if you have, as was stated earlier, more of a skill-based course. The other thing is that once students take something in AP Classroom, if they take a unit test, I have them complete a reflection sheet, which of course this year is a Google form. So I have them say, I did well on, so I tell them how to go back into AP Classroom, how to click their results, how to sort by topic, and then they can go through and mark, okay, what did I do well on? So we start with that. And so notice this note here that's really important. Even if you aren't happy with your overall score, you had some things you did better on than others. And they can pick multiple topics here. Then looking forward to, again, improvement. So what did you not do so well on? So looking back at your test, even if you're happy with your overall score, you had some things you didn't do as well on unless you scored a 100. So having them pick out which topics they need to maybe improve upon. And so then I have them reflect. I teach freshmen in the Advanced Placement Human Geography course. So I have them look at, okay, what did I do to maybe create those results? So what were the different strengths that I had in preparing for the Unit 1 exam? So did I take notes that were actually useful notes? Did I take advantage of the asynchronous class videos? Did I attend our small group time and did I participate during that? Did I attend office hours? And we've created these APHG live sessions. When I say we, I have a PLC partner, Merritt Robinson, and we do everything completely co-planned together. And so our students can attend each of our office hours depending on what they need at that moment. Did I review consistently? Did I do active review? Did I do self-quizzing? We have them also do mind maps, or concept maps, in other words, for each unit. You know, did I do those just to check the box and say I did it, or did I actually have a useful mind map or concept map? Did I teach the topic to others or even myself in the mirror? So that's what we focus on, is students understanding that studying doesn't consist of staring. Instead, it consists of being active with the material. And then looking forward, what are their goals for Unit 2? So this is where the student determines what their goals are. Notice it's a very open-ended question. Some students will be very specific here, and other students will focus more on like score points and things like that. At this point, it's early in the year, and so I just want them to have a goal that they're working towards. We can tweak the appropriateness of that goal more as we go on. And so then, okay, considering that goal, what are the different things that I need to work on as I begin Unit 2? And so you'll see this is really a duplicate list. Your list would probably vary a little bit depending on your specific classroom and your subject material. And so really what it is about is it is truly about having a growth mindset, trying to get students to improve consistently, and also those that do struggle at first, especially in an advanced placement class, having them build upon small successes to get there. Here are some other classroom tools. And so I'm going to click on this. When you look at the actual presentation, all of these go to the same overview of tools. And this is directly from AP Classroom. And so once you end up clicking on that, you are going to see some of the things that were referenced earlier, such as course and exam descriptions, unit guides, the daily videos, the topic questions, different things like that. And as I have a note on here, more improvements are coming to AP Classroom based upon teacher feedback. So it is also important that you look at the resources and think about what are strengths, what are weaknesses, what are things that you need for AP Classroom to do in order to better serve your students. And then you would want to pass those along with the community moderator is probably the best person for your respective subject area. So I mentioned that FRQs, being able to write your own free response questions, is one thing that is coming. Other things that have been talked about that do not have a release date yet or anything are things such as students being able to self-score FRQs based upon rubrics. That's something that teachers have asked for. And so do ask if there are things that would help you, because the resource is still sometimes a little clunky to navigate, but it is getting better and better, and your feedback is definitely needed. So that was my focus area for this presentation, although I, of course, would be happy to answer any other questions as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Allison. Right now, we do not have any questions, but I'm pretty sure some are coming in. So we can get started with Jason, and as some are coming in, we will pass them on.
All right, so I'm on now?
You are.
Okay, so for my focus area, I thought, sorry, it's been a long day. I think one of the things that I've been teaching AP classes, I teach AP literature, and I've taught it for a long time. I'm also just newly this year teaching AP research. And I think that for a lot of people who are, those who've maybe been around a long time and have not relied on the online resources as much as they were available, I think might be in kind of the same boat as a lot of people right now, as those of us who are teaching new classes right now and are like, oh, which is always the thing when we grab a new AP class, which is, oh my God, there's so much I have to cover, and how do I create all of this at once? So what I thought I would do, I assume that if people need help with AP Classroom, they might not be entirely aware of the AP communities. So I am going to just share my screen. Okay. I think it's being stubborn on me.
Oh no, you see the 3 dots? Yep.
Yep, no, I see it. I'm clicking share.
Oh no.
Let me try again.
Okay.
No, it's not letting me share my screen for some reason.
Is it giving you an error or?
It's got the share grayed out.
Oh, okay. So click on, you should see yourself or something, and then it should turn blue. It's like an invisible.
Click on what?
It's under your entire screen.
Right.
You can click on that box, and then the share button should turn blue.
Okay, I got it. I'm sorry.
Got it. No.
All right.
There we go. Yep.
Sharing my screen. So this is an example. This is the AP research community, which I've been using tons and tons lately because that's such a big, complicated class. So for anyone who isn't aware, okay, this is a different address, right? This is apcommunity.collegeboard.org, and you do have to ask to join to be in any of the communities, and you have to be listed as a teacher or whatever. But once you're in, there is an enormous amount of useful information. It's one of those things where if you have a question, someone else has already had that question, and it's probably already answered here. So these are just the current posts. Something that I have found really useful to do is to go into resources. There were some things specifically with AP research regarding the prep journal, which for those of you who are watching and teach that class, that's a big chunk of the course, and it's a thing that the students kind of struggle with wrapping their brains around at the beginning, like, because it doesn't have a discrete product that they do. It's a progressive thing that they're constantly working on, and you as the instructor are just going in to check. So you can, I can go over here to the search, and you can see where I searched prep recently because it popped up there. You can search for it, and then all of these things here are resources for the prep journal. And any class that you have, if there's something in particular that you want to look at, you can go there and search for it. The discussions also are useful, sometimes more, sometimes less, it varies. But I find a lot of the resources on here to be really excellent, and you can find particular teachers who tend to post really excellent things. The other thing that I did want to point out, on the interface, I'm going to stop sharing now, because I think, in terms of slides, everyone has shown you everything that's there. But it is important to note, and I think it is worthwhile to note for those of us, as a teacher of AP literature, one of the things that really concerned me, and I'm glad that I kind of worked with this stuff last year, is that a lot of my students have a hard time with the timing of the essays. And it is worth noting that if you have not used the AP classroom assessments before, you can set timers on them, right? So you can set, and they have the various levels of questions. You have to kind of poke around on them to see which one you want to assign to your kids. But normally what I will do is I'll give them 55 or 60 minutes on their first essay, and then it drops. Every couple essays, it'll drop, 5 or 10 minutes, depending on what I think they can handle. So they do get used to having that limited time span. And I was worried about that, or I would have been worried about that this year if I didn't already know that the free response boxes were available up there. So, be aware of that. Be aware also, and this is, I think, one view that wasn't shown in the slides, that you can look at a full class view. And a full class view can often give you a real sense of, is this something that one student missed? Or is this something that, oh, wow, okay, I thought I got that concept and I did not get that concept. Everyone is scoring low on it. I need to go back and reteach that. And that's, for me, been an important skill. There have been a couple of times where I've taught something, had them do the assessment, and everybody does fine except for one component. And then everybody, has punted that pretty badly. So that's when you know that there's something that you've missed or that you maybe haven't gotten across as clearly as you think you could, that's available to you. I think a random piece of advice, perhaps, for people who haven't used these sites this much, the College Board's website can be awfully user unfriendly, and often the easiest way to find stuff I have found is just to Google it, like as in Google AP community for AP literature or whatever. And that'll get you there. As long as you know your password and login, you can type those in and log in. But my goodness, I still sometimes get lost. They changed the interface a little bit. And it's 15 minutes of me just trying to figure out where my class is all of a sudden because of what they do with things. But that's really all I had. I just wanted to make sure that people took a look at AP community and we're aware that it's there. I think we're all lacking in sort of hard, tangible resources right now for some of the online stuff. And a lot of that stuff is already Google Docs. So it means you open it, it's automatically shared on your drive, you make a copy, you post it to your Google Classroom, and it's there for you for any stuff that you might not have digital copies of or that you might need new digital copies of things. But that was really all that I had for this one.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Allison, Susan, I'm not sure if you are still there, but does anyone want to have any final thoughts or words? And I believe we're all high school teachers. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Jason, where are you? What school?
Oh, sorry. I teach at Brown.
Brown. Okay. My first grader goes there. Okay. And then Susan, I forgot. I'm sorry. Mel?
I'm at Atherton.
Atherton. Awesome. And then Allison's at Manual. Okay. Awesome. Any closing thoughts, any advice you would like to give to teachers that may be teaching AP or may be looking to teach AP?
So one thing I would say, and I think that was really good that Jason went over the AP community, because I think right now we all need as much support and community as we can get, is that in addition to the College Board official advanced placement community sites, if you are a social media user and are on Facebook, most groups also have an unofficial. It is definitely not affiliated with College Board, but most subjects also have one or more unofficial Facebook groups. Now, of course, those groups are Facebook groups. So just as the AP community groups, even the official ones, will vary a little bit in terms of how much activity there is and usefulness, the same thing will be true of the Facebook groups, and that's usually driven by the moderators. But if you're needing more like immediate support that might deal more with finding resources, like if you notice that something's not already in the library of your community group, you might want to try the Facebook group and explore that option and see what's there, because then there's more frequent postings, which is both, a pro and a con, right? There's more activity on most of the Facebook groups, which is a good thing and a bad thing. One disadvantage of the Facebook groups is they are not screened so much. So again, it depends on your moderators, but most of the time, things that are posted as lesson ideas are not going to be screened. Whereas things on the AP community, the official community, the moderator is charged with screening those. And so just realize that just because it's posted there doesn't mean that it's great. It doesn't even mean that it ties in with the course and exam description either. Yeah. So that's one thing I would add. The other thing I wanted to add is with the timers on AP Classroom. And this is something that I have been experimenting more with because, to be quite honest, even though I've been really heavily involved in even some of the development of AP Classroom, I had not used it in terms of students taking assessments until, well, now I kind of have to, I feel. And so with the timers, you can set the timer, but students can go beyond the timer. And so if you set the timer, what'll happen, and I would share screens, but actually I will for this screen. I just can't to show you of course, the actual student results. But with the timer, so it should be pulled up there now.
It is, yep.
All right, excellent. So this is where, if you've already created an assessment, you go in under the settings for the assessment. So you can choose, like, I'm going to assign it to all my classes. I'm going to make it active. So like if I wanted something to go active like next week at 2:45 p.m., I could go ahead and have it here, and then students won't actually be able to access it until then. Obviously right now, we're all going to be online format, and then I can set my due date. After the due date, so if I set a specific due date, so in this case, October 2nd, 2:45 p.m., then the students will not have access to it if they try to access it after that time. So you might want to use your own classroom decisions to decide whether that's a good idea or a bad idea. I've been setting hard due dates, and then for students that need extended time, they have, of course, in this flexible NTI environment, other things come up, then I'll reopen it. But you can also hear where it says students see results. If you do after scoring and a student takes, a quiz or whatever that you've set up there, then they will immediately be able to go back into their results. If you are counting it as a score, then maybe you don't want that to happen. So you can set no, and then once the students have all submitted, then you can go back in and change it to after scoring, and they'll all be able to see it. Nice. And then this is the timer, and so you can set it for whatever is appropriate, but they will extend past. And how I found this useful is that obviously, students have open access to everything as they're taking these different assessments that we set up. But I've seen two issues with my own students. I've seen students that haven't been performing so well on some quizzes, and they've only been spending like 3-4 minutes on a quiz that should take much longer than that. Well, that's one issue, and helps me know like what sort of feedback I need to give to that student. And then I've had other students where on like a simple 10-question quiz, they've been spending 180 minutes. And so I also need to figure out what's going on there and talk to those students. And is it just that you're coming back to it, or Are you trying to look up everything in notes, or what's going on there? And so that can also, like, having that timer there can not only help with the timing of the exam, like Jason mentioned, but it can also really help you as a teacher kind of be aware of what's going on with some of your students at kind of the different extremes of timing and problem solve. So that's the only thing I wanted to add.
Thank you for that. And I know that was a great resource, and you taught me just seeing that visual of the timer and then those points that whether the difference between after grading or no, but you can change it back to after posting as well. So
Yeah, so what I do is I just go in after all students have submitted, except for like the personal progress checks, because that's just, as Susan had mentioned earlier, that's really just meant for feedback, in general. Like it's you're not really supposed to count that as a score. So those I just say fine after scoring. And but there are some other assessments where I do want to get a better feel for, okay, the student didn't consult necessarily someone else's results, at least. How are they doing? And of course, there's no fail-safe measure, but it helps a little bit to preserve the release of those results if you want to have a little bit more security until afterwards, depending, of course, on what you're doing. And then if you really, really care about the timer, if you set the due date and time, I'm sorry, there's a squirrel in my backyard right now, so the dog is very excited.
Yeah.
he is at attention. But if the timing ends up at some point being really key, where you do want students for some reason to stick to that timing and not be able to extend past, a little trick, I haven't done this yet, but a little trick you can do there is you can have the start time, like say if they're going to take something during your live class or something like that, you can have the start time be like, let's say it's a 15-minute thing, start 15 minutes and then close out, set the timing to 15 minutes and have it close out 15 minutes later. Does that make sense? So like you would set that in time so that the entire assessment time's out. Now the problem is that students you have with 504s and IEPs, right now, again, this is something else that's been requested. Right now, you can't make exceptions for individual students. So you would need to be aware that if you have students with 504s and IEPs, I have many students that get extended time. I can't use that method and provide that extended time. And so that would be problematic in my situation. But if you have a class where that's not your situation, and timing really matters to you, then that's a way to kind of work around that.
And Allison, I wanted to point out, correct me if I'm wrong about this, when I used AP Classroom last year with the personal progress checks, when students, like for example, like the first time we did it in class, like the students, like we used the Chromebooks and everything so they could get used to it, because after that they did it for homework. And if a student, like I had a kid that was like, oh no, I submitted it, but I wasn't done yet. Like when you reopen it, you can't just reopen it for one kid. You have to reopen it like for the entire class, right?
That is correct.
Which is not a bad thing if you still want to use that as like, okay, let's try it again, because, because they'll be willing to do that. But I also want to point out too, with the videos, like last spring, AP released wonderful videos for review for the exam. And, again, I've been teaching for a long time, and this is only my second year teaching AP, but as somebody new teaching to AP, with the videos, one, if you're new to teaching AP, those videos are a great resource. And then two, like if you have a student come back and say, well, I watched the daily video and they said it this way. And right now, my son, who also is a 10th grader and attends Atherton, he's taking AP, but he's taking it with another teacher. So he wants to argue about like, well, this is what she said, but you say this. And I said, it's like this. I go, if we were on Gordon Ramsay's, like, the kitchen show, and, I go, I have to, we have to cook a chicken dish, and this teacher's going to cook cordon bleu, but I'm going to make like fried chicken. It doesn't matter because it's still chicken. So when you watch those videos, like, don't think like, and if your student comes back, well, this is how they, like, just, I like that analogy. Like, we're all using the same kitchen. I might use or even like, I'm using one tool, the other teacher's using another one. We just say it in a different way.
I think that that's a very good point. And I will say that one thing to be aware of is that your students, whether you assign AP Daily videos or not, they are available for the students. So in my opinion, you need to watch them yourself and see what's out there, because even if you don't quote assign them, they still are where a student, if they're motivated enough to like go through and view the videos, they can view them themselves. And then if you assign them, you'll notice that some of these on my screen have a little arrow next to them and some do not. The arrows are ones I have assigned. The only difference that makes is it comes up in the student to-do list. That's it. But the other thing is, I can click on these videos and I can see that who watched it. Now, one caveat, of course, watching it doesn't mean engagement in it, because I can hit play and walk away. And also, like, my percentage watched is actually a lot higher than this, because if they end even a second early, it does not count as watched. All right, so this is not a perfect thing, but again, if I have a student that's struggling in other capacities, this is another set of information where I can be like, I've been assigning these videos and you're telling me you're watching them, but from what I'm seeing, you're not watching them here. Plus, the results that I'm seeing don't support that. So kind of what's going on there. And so those are, and even if you don't assign it, you can go in and see. So it's kind of interesting. Like, I can go into this video too. Well, I didn't assign it, so notice only 5% watched it. Right? So much lower number actually watched it. And then obviously I won't click on the specific names, but I can click on here and I can see who watched it, who didn't, which again gives me more information, which I know that we're kind of overburdened with information about a lot of things right now, but I feel like it's really hard to get good data on really where our students are performing. And so, in my opinion, the more that we can get this sort of data that's not just like the assessment that I assign them or that sort of thing, the better off we'll be. And so so that's with the videos and the assigning. But do realize, even if you never assign them, students do have access. So like Susan said, a teacher might explain things in a little bit different way, and in the end it probably doesn't matter. But if a student comes up and is talking to you about these AP Daily videos and you're not unfamiliar with them, you probably should be.
And I think one of the good things is that even though you may not have assigned those videos, that students can look at those videos as a resource. And as you see, 5% watch those videos, which is, they're eager for information. They're eager to really learn about that particular topic. All right. Well, I thank you all for your time. This video will be uploaded later during this week, so we will be able to share this video, and this whole recording will be actually available now if as soon as we end this call to share.
All right, thank you.
Thank you all. You all are amazing. Thank you. All right. Well, I believe, let me double check the schedule. Yes, that is our last session for this week, but do not forget, and don't worry, because we will be back on, so far, 2 Mondays, so the next 2 Mondays, again, starting bright and early next Monday with the digital innovation team, with the digital tool weekly updates. You never know which update we may be sharing, because as you know, Microsoft and Google and perhaps Apple's, because we are a digital agile district, they are always coming out with updates, and we always look forward to sharing those updates with you. So you can access the schedule on the NTI webpage, as well as access those resources that were linked to the schedule. The videos will be available to you on demand as soon as I hit in streaming, and then these videos will be broken up by session topic later this week as well. If any of the digital innovation team can be of support to you, please do not hesitate to reach out to us, and we will be so happy to support you, your school, and your students. So without further ado, everyone have a great week, and we will see you next Monday on the Digital Learning Channel.